I'm going to speak about Bruce Lee in this video and about his early death. And I've read pretty much all the books that are out there available about Bruce Lee. And just recently I read the two books I read it again by Bruce Thomas about Bruce Lee. One of them is Fighting Spirit, the other one is Fighting Words. And it's got me to think about his life a little bit more. And being a little older now, I can analyze it more deeply, more philosophically, more scientifically. And I'm also really studying deeply more about Eastern philosophy, about Zen, meditation, Tao. So I got some interesting things to say about what possibly could have happened with Bruce Lee. I think it is a possibility that Bruce Lee could have planned his early death. If you want to look for the facts, if you watch all his movies and you really pay attention, you read all the books out there about him, and you really pay attention and you understand the philosophy of the East, then you may start to understand that there may be some truth to what I'm saying. So, the reason why I say this, first off, one of his primary goals since he was a child, and he said this to his mom and his siblings and friends all the time, that he wanted like worldwide fame. He wanted his name to be a household name as common as the word Coca-Cola. Fame was extremely important to him. Worldwide fame was extremely important to him. Alright, and as we all know, the ultimate fame for a person to have is when they're at their peak of their stardom, the peak of their fame, and then they mysteriously die. Then they become legends and untouchable, basically. Like the fame that they have, no living person could ever match. Being a legend is something that you can only be when you die at the height of your fame. And one of the people that I know, that I've read about, that Bruce Lee admired, was James Dean. And he died as well, I believe, from a motorcycle accident during one of the peak of his fame. So it happened to him. As we all know about Tupac Shakur, he's another one who died at the peak of his fame, and he turned into a legend. We know about Elvis Presley, who died, pretty much during the peak of his fame. Then he's known as the King of Rock. We know about Marilyn Monroe, who died pretty much at the peak of her fame. And then we know about John Lennon, who died pretty much at the peak of his fame. We all obviously know about Jesus Christ. He would not have had the effect that he has had, over these thousands of years. He was crucified, or they say he was crucified at the age of 33. So he achieved legendary fame, and now there's branches of Christianity everywhere, and everybody's following his teachings. We know about Socrates and how he was killed because they were saying he was corrupting the minds of the youth. So we know about all these people who have achieved legendary fame. And then we know, it's obvious that Bruce Lee knows about this. That in order to get the most amount of fame possible, you're going to have to die during the peak of your fame. And there is quite a possibility that he was possibly aiming towards this. to achieve this. Now, if you see somebody like the greats of our era in various sports, such as basketball, someone like Michael Jordan, who is like the king of the courts and seen as the best ever, but he's not a legend because he's still alive. And when you reach a peak, that's why Michael Jordan kept trying to go back, because when you reach a high levels of fame and stardom and you're considered the best, it's hard to step down from that pedestal and no longer have that attention that you are so used to being number one. And that's why Michael Jordan kept going back, going to baseball and then trying to go back to basketball, weren't changing his number to 45 and everything, because he couldn't let that go. Couldn't let that, being number one go. And we see that with also Brett Favre, being one of the best quarterbacks out there. As he's getting older, he's aging, his physical abilities are not allowing him to maintain that position of being number one. And he's trying to keep going back. He can't fully retire. And that's what happens for living, athletes that get to really high level. It's hard for them to step down. We have someone like Muhammad Ali, who is, considered pretty much the best boxer ever. But since he didn't die at the peak of his fame, he can never be a legend. And I do not believe Bruce Lee wanted to be in the shoes of either Michael Jordan or Muhammad Ali or Brett Favre. I believe he was aiming to be someone like a legend, someone that is where the fame cannot be overthrown, where the fame can never be reproduced. And when people die as legends, they're put at the highest level as far as the fame is concerned. And I believe that's a possibility that he may have been aiming for that. So some facts that happened that may prove this point is that he had a near-death experience a few months before his actual death. And he was rushed to the hospital. He pretty much fainted, and he was vomiting, and his body was, shaking uncontrollably, and it was very close to near-death experience. And they had to rush him to the emergency room, and pretty much part of the cause, they said that it might have been he had eating cannabis, because he was so stressed at that time that he was eating cannabis to calm himself down. And the doctors were saying that his body or his brain or whatever might have had an allergic reaction to this, and they advised him not to eat it anymore. And after this experience, it said in one of those books written by Bruce Thomas, I believe it was Fighting Words, he was saying to his mom, Bruce Lee was talking to his mom after that experience, and she told her, I'm going to die soon. The doctor says something's wrong with my brain, but don't worry, you'll be taken care of. There'll be more than enough money for you to live on. And then his mom said, don't talk stupid. Don't say those types of things. And not much longer, he actually died. And there was cannabis found in his stomach. So he didn't listen to the doctors. He continued to eat the cannabis. See, when you experience a near-death experience, and the doctors are telling him, don't eat the cannabis, because that might have been the cause, and then he continues to eat it, that kind of shows right there that he pretty much wanted to die. You know, that it's almost like committing suicide. When you know that you're allergic to something, and then you almost die, and then you do it again, that's almost pretty much like committing suicide. And he chose to die at his, they're calling this person, this actress that he was in the home, calling that person his mistress. Whether or not she's his mistress, who knows? But say she is his mistress. And they were questioning her about Bruce and about their relations and if they had intimacy. And at first she admitted that they were intimate and that she was his mistress. Then she started to deny it. And then later on she labeled him as like one of her spiritual guides or something, that they had a spiritual relationship. Alright, so if this is true, if they had a spiritual relationship, she could have possibly been the only person that Bruce felt comfortable in telling that he wanted to pretty much take his own life early. And he was going to do it in her home. Because if he would have done it in his own home where Linda is, she would have rushed him to the hospital and he could have been revived again possibly. But by doing it at the mistress's home, he could tell her, let me go to sleep and let me pretty much die and let me lay there for a few hours before you even call anybody for help to make sure I'm dead. That could be quite a possibility. If you look at about the situation surrounding the incident, she tried to wake him up, or he said that he had a headache. She gave him that pill, and then he went to bed, or he went to lay down, and then she tried to wake him up, and he wouldn't wake up. And then she waited 30 minutes and she tried to wake him up again and he still wouldn't wake up. And then she calls the director of, one of these Hong Kong directors and tells the director that Bruce is not waking up. And then she waits until the director comes into the home to check on Bruce. Director comes to check on Bruce, can't wake him up. And then she calls her personal doctor to come check on Bruce. The personal doctor comes, and then they finally call the ambulance. So this is like hours after, 2 hours or more from the initial point of when she couldn't wake him up. So I see that this is very suspicious. If she really wanted to save his life, she would have called immediately to the emergency and had them pick him up and attempt to revive him. They also say that she may have been frightened, that she didn't know what to do because it looked really bad. She didn't want the emergency to come over and have Bruce there in her home because it'd be looking very bad. But that was part of the reasoning that they said that she did it the way that she did.